Hello, Mario here. Today we're going to talk about exporting from Adobe Premiere Pro. Not a very interesting subject, sorry. But if you really want to get the best quality out of your export, here's some good tips for you. So in this video we're going to cover H.264 versus MP4. What do these mean? What are the differences? We're also going to double check our sequence settings before doing our export. It doesn't matter how good your export settings are. If you got your sequence settings incorrect, your export will be poor. Next, I'm going to be comparing exporting directly from Premiere or exporting using the queue option. And along with that queuing option, how can we export multiple scenes at the same time? Or export multiple scenes at the same time while we're away. That way we're working on a scene, work on another scene, queue them both up, go to sleep, go grocery shopping, whatever, play games, and let those two scenes export. Hope this helps you. So what is the difference between H.264 and MP4? What do these even mean? Well, MP4 is the file container. It's the file type. We have JPEGs, we have MPGs, MPEGs, we have GIFs, or GIFs, or GIFs, or GIFs, however you want to say it. We have MP3s. We have all different file types. Those are containers. So the MP4 is actually our container that we're going to store the content of our scene into. H.264 is the compressor. It's how that data is compressed and what methods do we use to maintain that quality, or at least kind of gauge our quality to make sure it's as good as we possibly can get it. So MP4 is the container, H.264 is how we compress it. Okay, so you finished your scene, you're happy with it. Well, you're probably out of time and happy enough. But you're ready to export. This is the sequence, and this is just a summary. I'm going to go into each one of these in detail, but this is a quick summary of what we're going to go through in order. First, we're going to check the sequence settings to make sure that the quality is correct in our sequence before the export. Then we're actually going to select that sequence to tell Premiere, hey, this is what I want to export. Then we do the good old File Export Media from the top File menu, File Export Media. We set our compressor to H.264, and that'll automatically set the container to MP4. So that's automatic, which is kind of nice. Then we're going to set the name of the file that it's going to export and the location of where that file is going to be stored. And then we're either going to export directly or we're going to queue it up to export later. Let's go through each step. So if you're exporting or if you're creating animation, these are the settings you're going to want to use. If you're doing it from your phone, if your content is from your phone, some of these settings might be different, but they have to match your source. So for animation, it's actually quite straightforward. Our resolution is 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second, and make sure you have it set to square pixels. Otherwise, it'll stretch the image. Also, make sure it's set to progressive scan. That way, it'll draw the entire screen one frame at a time completely. If it's set to anything else other than progressive scan, it's going to take two sweeps to draw one frame, and you get this kind of waffling effect in your image, and it doesn't look so good. So these are the four settings you really want to get right. And as you can see, I do have a screenshot there, and that's showing where I have my 24 frames per second set, where my 1920 by 1080 is set, where the square pixel is set, and where the progressive scan is set. They're all just right up there in the top. Let me show you how to do that in the software. So here I am in the software. and this is the sequence that I'm working on. So to check the sequence settings, I click on the sequence, then go Sequence, Sequence Settings. In there's where 24 frames per second is, 1920 by 1080, square pixel, and we want to check fields, and actually here I have it wrong. It should be set to progressive scan, no fields. Once that's all set, I could just hit OK, and I'm ready to export this sequence. Now that we know our sequence is correct, we want to select it and then do File, Export, Media. Now if you're looking here in this example, you could see that the sequence has a blue border around it. And that blue border means that it's selected. And that means what I did to do that is I actually clicked right here on the sequence itself, and that made that border blue. That's telling Premiere this is what I want to export, because we can have 4, 5, 10 different sequences in one project. How does Premiere know which one we want to export? So we have to select it first, and that's by clicking it here. Just by clicking it here and getting that blue border, now it's selected. So now we just go to the top here, File, Export, Media. Let's do it. Back in the software, you could see the scene that I'm looking at, and you could see that I have the sequence open, but there's no blue border around here. I need Premiere to know which sequence I'm going to export. So right now you can see in the Project tab there's a blue highlight, or if I'm clicked here there's a blue highlight. I need that blue border on this window. That is telling Premiere that this is the sequence I'm going to export. Okay, so it's just as simple as just clicking here. That's selected. Now I'm ready to export this. File, Export, Media. Now when this window comes up, I have my format set to H.264 because that's the compressor that we're going to use. Okay. Now there are different compressors in here. There's quite a few actually, and there's even a couple H.264s. If you just want a straight MP4 to watch or upload to YouTube, set this to H.264 just the way I have it. This output name is where it's going to be saved. So by clicking on this, it's telling me where do I want to save that. Well, maybe I want to save it to my desktop. So here's my desktop, and then here's what I'm going to name it. Maybe I might even call it version 3, and click Save. So now you have selected where it's going to be saved and the file name. The last option you have is whether you're going to click Queue or Export. If you just need to export right now, the one file, export's perfectly fine. If you're going to do a couple of these, and then you want to go to sleep and let the 3 of them export at the same time, then we queue them. So this queue is for multiple sequences or multiple edits. This export is for just one at a time. Okay, say you're ready to export, but you know your export's going to take half an hour or maybe an hour or maybe a couple hours. And you don't want to tie up your computer right now. You want to work on maybe sequence 3 or sequence 4. Work on the next sequence. So you can queue it up, work on the next sequence, queue that one up, work on the next sequence, queue it up. So now you have 3 sitting in the queue ready to render. Then when you're ready to go to sleep or go play a game or go whatever, you can hit export at that point and all 3 will export at the same time. If they take an hour each, it'll still take 3 hours, but at least you don't have to sit there for 3 hours and watch it. Okay, so the queuing option, which you're seeing right here, queue, Okay, so if I want to just export one file, I'll just hit export. But if I'm doing 3 files or multiple files, then I'll use Q. And that way, while they're exporting, I can go do whatever I want to do. Let's queue a couple up and see what that looks like. Okay, so here I am in Premiere Pro, and I'm going to queue up this sequence. So again, I got to select the sequence. Gives me the blue background, or the blue border. Then I go File, Export, Media, just like we did before. We check all of our settings, H.264. We've named it and put it in a location. So H.264, named it and put it in a location. Then at the very bottom, we hit Q. And what that does is that puts it inside another program, Adobe Media Encoder. You can see this popped up automatically. It takes a bit of time. It doesn't pop up right away. So there you go. So there's my sequence. It popped up inside of Media Encoder. And it has my settings. And it even has the location of where that sequence is. Now I can let it sit there and not render it yet. It's just ready to go. The play button up here is how I'm going to render it. Okay, but let's add another one. Let's go back into Premiere. And this time I'm going to make a change. I'm going to add some text to this shot. So I grab my text tool. Such a cool scene. Okay, so I got that new text in, and I'm going to export this one now with the new text. File, Export, Media. Yeah, I do this again, same steps. Check my settings. So H.264. This time I'm going to rename it something else. Maybe version 2. And keep it in the same place as the other one. And again, we're going to hit Q. So now Media Encoder pops up again. And now I have my second one. And you can see now I have the first one and version 2 ready to go. So I can keep queuing up, trying different things, maybe trying different color filters. If I want to make a scary scene red and add a little red filter to it, I can add it in here just as one variation. Then I can hit play and they'll render. Now, as you saw, I had a sequence. I went File, Export, Media. I queued it up, and it sent it to Media Encoder that we're looking at here. Then I made a change to that sequence, did another export, File, Export, Media, and then queued it up again. I did rename it this time, though. So I queued it up again, and it sent it here. So you could see both of those sequences. Here's the first one. And this is the second sequence. It put them both into Adobe Media Encoder, and that way I can hit render, this play button way over here. I can hit that play button, and it'll export both of them. Now, it'll export the first one, and then it'll export the second one after. So it'll take the same amount of time, but at least I don't have to sit there and watch it export the first one, watch it export the second one. This way, I could set them up to render, hit render, go eat dinner, go take a nap, go play a game, come back, watch it, probably not like it, change it, and queue it back up. Okay. Well, this time I'm not exactly going to give you tips. I'm going to give you the order again just to make sure you understand the order that we did things. First, I checked my sequence settings to make sure that the quality of that sequence is good. Once that's set, then I select the sequence. Make sure it has the blue border. Once it's selected, File, Export, Media. And that brings up the screen where I could set the compressor. And we set the compressor to H.264. It's the same compressor as a Blu-ray player would use, as an example. We name the file, select the location, and then we either export it right away or queue it up to export later with some other scenes or sequences. Hope this video was helpful.